I'm here today to talk to you about progressive web apps, and I filled in for another speaker that dropped out. Originally, I was only meant to be here to interview Imogen tonight about what she's doing, and it's kind of pale in comparison what I'm doing. But I think it's a very important topic, and I work in a team that talks a lot about progressive web apps, and I want to talk to you today about um, demystifying it a bit and making it a bit more understanding for you what progressive web apps mean and what they mean for you and what you can do with them, rather than like, oh god, it's the new cool thing, and if you don't know, if you don't understand it, then you're already out of a job and homeless tomorrow and these kind of things. So everybody gets super excited about PWAs, but it's a hard to find a understanding what's going on there. So there is a lot of like hype going on about it. So I'm Chris Heilmann. I work for a small startup in the vicinity of Seattle that's been around for 40 years and was the bane of my existence as a web developer in the last 20 years until I joined them and we finally got rid of Internet Explorer as the main browser. And I collected all the things that are here if you want to have them later on to click through and to play with at the aka.ms/mobile era, because I gave that talk at the Mobile Era conference before as well, because in 2 days I couldn't write a new talk because I got to give another talk on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and next Wednesday. So I'm kind of full up already. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's CodePoet. It's the easiest way to reach me as well. I tweet a lot about technology, about artificial intelligence, a lot about the web as it is right now, and pictures of my dog and kittens and hedgehogs. So if that's missing in your life as well, that's another good source for that. So progressive web apps are all the rage. Everybody's talking about that. Google I/O has, the Chrome Dev Summit has just been, and everything was PWA there. Microsoft, we've been talking about PWAs before. Samsung is all over it. Mozilla is all over it right now. Apple is interested. So we are thinking about what's going on there. And every time we have a hype, it's very confusing because all this messaging is like, our framework gives you PWAs for free, and you can build PWAs without knowing what they are. Yes, you can, but that also means you're building things that nobody needs and nobody wants. You just called it something cool to be part of a hype. When PWAs became a thing about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, Alex Russell and Francis Berryman defined them in a blog post about all these things that a PWA has to be. It has to be progressive, it has to be responsive, network independent, app-like, fresh, safe, discoverable, re-engageable, installable, and linkable. All these things are great things to have in an application, and all these things make absolute sense, but they're pretty much overloading anybody who just wants to learn what the hell a PWA is. Because if you tell people you got to finish 11 things before it's there, they're like, well, rather build an Android app because that's easier. It's too much to ask for in most cases because we're busy developers and we're not necessarily owning our time frames as well. So a lot of times we want to do the right thing, but we have to ship it first and then later on we can fix it, which is the biggest lie we tell to every developer ever on this planet, because you never get the time to fix it. It just stays there and is embarrassing on your CV for the rest of your life. So we got to do something about that. The biggest problem that a lot of people have when it comes to PWAs is the A part, where it's like, it has to be an application. You're like, well, I don't build applications. I just run the biggest newspaper website of Norway or something like that. I don't want to have an application. Why does these functionalities, why is this new hype only about apps? And it doesn't have to be. Not all things that the PWA technology is applicable to have to be applications. Your blog, your ebook, your artisty photography thingy, all of these things can benefit from the technology stack that makes up a PWA. And that's totally okay. You don't have to turn everything into an app. Personally, I don't think the Christian Heilmann app is something you would install, because it's kind of creepy to have me as an app when there's only space for 20 apps on your phone. I'm not that important. I'm not that interesting. There's a great article by my colleague Aaron Gustafson about this that explains all the benefits that all the different features that you might have on the web as content can have in the PWA stack. I think it's more important when I'm talking to clients right now a lot, and I'm talking a lot to enterprise people. I'm talking a lot to people from the retail environment. They all have an idea what progressive web apps are, so it's easier to tell them what they're not to begin with. So to basically stop these same stupid questions all the time. I just did a video series which is going to come out soon, and my favorite was when I talked to people, it's like, okay, PWAs are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript content that gets new technologies added to it to become something that's app-like and gets the benefits of an app. And they're like, great, so I can use my C# app and turn it into a PWA? You're like, no, you don't go from binary to HTML. That doesn't work. You do it the other way around. So how do developers that only know C# do it? And I'm like, they do it differently. It's very hard to explain to people that it's not an app model as you consider it. So the first thing, it's not a tick box in your development flow. There's not going to be a magical thing that says like, now make this a PWA. Woo, done. Let's go to the pub. It's not the end of all native development. It's totally fine to write a thick client application. It's totally fine to only have an iOS app. It's totally fine to only have an Android app. It's daring to have a Windows mobile only app, but there are other things where you can publish, and if you only want to publish on that platform, you're not a terrible person. It's okay. You don't have to do everything on the web. It makes more sense to do everything on the web, but that's a different story. It's not what every web content needs to get converted into. Not everything has to become a PWA. If you got a static website that hadn't changed in the last 40 years, fine. It's probably going to be cached by 10,000 people already. It's good. You don't need to upgrade it. You don't need to do something else with it. It's not native apps ported to the web. We've done that and failed. Every single time when we said like, okay, we're going to use HTML technology and put it on the web. And then people just did these huge things and put them on the web and were wondering why people didn't like them. They were really slow, they were really hard to use, and we were just like blaming web technology not being ready, rather than building something that makes sense on the web and then enhancing it in environments where it becomes more applicable, like an operating system or a mobile system. To me, they are a development approach of using a set of technologies that allows web content to be app-like experiences, including offline functionality, notifications, and device access. That is what a PWA to me is. So in essence, it's an HTML-based, JavaScript, CSS-based web thing that, according to where you run it, gets better. So you have it on a mobile device that has a lot of space to store it. It becomes an offline application. You have an opportunity to give notifications. It gets notifications. It can update in the background. Out of a sudden, it upgrades in the background. So next time I come to it, I don't get asked to download the whole thing again. And this is what it's about. We're breaking the idea of an application being something that is a huge monolithic thing that end users have to get, install, not like, and delete. Instead, we have something that you follow a link, you play with it, you like it, and then next time you come there, by the way, I'm available offline now. By the way, do you want to give me access to your camera? By the way, do you want me to allow to store more data on your device? And the UX of that is the thing that we have to really nail this time, because every single time we said, oh, this is an HTML application, you just have to get it from that store and actually buy that kind of hardware to use it, people didn't want it. They are progressive. That means the experience of the application improves with the capability of the device and the quality of the connection. You cannot tell a user to buy another device unless you're actually selling that device and it's only for that device. But if you want users, you have to let them use what they already have. They're used to it, they know how to use it, they're happy with it, they would love your content on it, but there's nothing more frustrating to me when I go to a website that already uses like 12 megabyte of unpatched React Core, whatever JavaScript library thing that makes my fan run, and then the first thing I get is like, do you want to download our app? Like, you just wasted 12 megabyte of your data storage on your device for this month on reading this. Do you want to download another 50 that you don't have anymore? This is just insulting to our end users. Because we want to have more control over our end users, we shouldn't be making them download more things. We should make them give the first thing first and get better when they come back. or get better when their device can do it. When JavaScript is not available, like a bad wireless, for example, or something went wrong in the building of your thing, it still should work. I can go to google.com or bing.com and I have a search box and I press a button and I get a search result. The reason is that both of these companies make money by showing you search results and ads around it. This is how the whole model works. So the one use case of search things, find things will always work. When JavaScript is available, when my machine has a fast connection, when my machine has storage, out of a sudden I get the image previews, I get an autocomplete, I get all the cool things that made search much more interesting than it is. But the main use case is always what works. And we gave up on that a long time ago. We've forgotten that we want to have one use case for our end users. Instead, we give them the kitchen sink and everything else we had lying around and hope that they pick the things that they love. And that's why all the things we use nowadays are so bloated that we don't even want to use them any longer. Progressive web apps are an opportunity to take these technologies and clean up and speed up what we currently have. The web has become an image of ourselves, lazy, obese, and slow. And this is not what the web is supposed to be. Once you're like me and you're traveling all the time and you get like really flaky connections, you get super annoyed when you cannot send off a form until some JavaScript has loaded. It does something completely random. The amount of times I have to actually turn on developer tools and enable a submit button to press it in the developer tools because somebody thought they have to download 50 meg in the background is really, really frustrating to me. And this is not a cheap device. This is not a cheap device. I have money. I would love to use your stuff. Just don't put anything in my way that stops me from doing that. It's an opportunity to reconsider what we call apps and how users find, use, and discard them. And as what we're doing right now, it doesn't work. If you look at the statistics of any of the app stores, iOS, Android, Windows Store, people are not happy. They're using them because they have to, but most of the apps that people download there lose all their users in the first 3 months. 66% of the apps in the Google App Store have never been downloaded, not even once. But somebody paid a lot of money for saying, like, you got to have an app. A website is what you had in 1997. Apps is what people want right now. Trying to find things in stores is a pain. My brother is a budding comic book artist. And I thought I'd do him a good thing and buy him an Android tablet. And then I was like, hey, cool, painting app for Android apps. Never look for painting app in the app store because you get like, paint this dog, paint this elephant, paint this kitten, paint this Mickey Mouse. Somebody just created 6,000 apps with like one JPEG and a painting thing on top of that I could do in 10 lines of JavaScript. The only thing I found, Autodesk. Nobody would expected me to find a company that I thought was outdated in 1985 to be the only one that writes something great for Android for comic book artists to use. Because there's an overload there. You tell somebody like, hey, I've got this app, go to the App Store. The App Store says like, well, you got to be logged in. Cool, I log in. You need to have a credit card. Oh, that's a lot of people already don't have a credit card, don't have access to one, cannot actually download and access the thing. Then it's like, give me a pint of blood, give me your firstborn, show me where you come, and like all these questions. You can see that from like 100 users that you try to reach, 7 come through after all these steps. So we gotta take off these barriers and let people consume our things and then buy them. It's a much better way of getting there. So for the purpose of this keynote talk this time, let's talk about apps. Let's talk about not the web stuff, but only about apps themselves. Or in other words, as I call them, interfaces to do things with. If your app only shows me your content, it's not an app. An app should be something I customize to myself. I put something in, I get something back. I collect something, I do something with that thing. It's not your company CEO saying they're welcome to our app. Nobody needs that kind of crap. But we keep having to build these kind of things. So the web of old isn't fun. That's our travel app that I have to use in the company that I work for right now. I'm not calling any names, but you all know. I get these flashbacks to 1997 when I had to make rounded corners for Internet Explorer 6, 7, these kind of things when I look at that thing. Every single drop-down that is too small on that 3000 by 2000 resolution that I have right now does a reload while I'm clicking it. So while I'm typing something in, it jumps to the next form and gives me something I didn't want. You know, these like, what is it, like SharePoint 1997 kind of interfaces that basically says, I hate you, but you have to use it. My favorite about these things is what I call the Stockholm syndrome of interfaces, because you go to companies that use these things for years and you give them something cooler and they're like, no, 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 no. I planned for 15 minutes of pain every morning of using that thing. I learned that I don't have to think about it, so please don't give me something that makes me think. I'm happy to use that. People start defending those because the other ones are too complex. So what was the problem of the web of old and apps on the web of old? First of all, it's information overload. Like, I don't want any of that. I need this form. This is all I need. And if it's a 2, it will automatically realize that because I don't do a one-way here. I don't need all the other information. Give me something that I can start with. It's UI for a big screen with low resolution. So this was like when 640 pixels were cool. And this is there, it made sense. But now on a larger screen, the font is far too small and I'm old, I got glasses, it's not fun to use. A fat connection dependency. Every drop down, loading something randomly in the background without telling me that it's loading something, it might just basically not do anything while I'm typing in the rest of my content, and it goes away because the page out of a sudden refreshes and says like, I got the new data that you didn't request. There's no offline experience. I cannot use that thing offline at all. You cannot look the data, but I would, for example, love to see the thing where I'm supposed to go, what my hotel is, and so on and so forth. And it's hardly usable on mobile at all because it didn't even have the viewport meta tag. So basically you scroll in every direction and hope you find the form field that you want to enter in. Now, the next round of things that we gave it a cleaner look. You know, we didn't use Times New Roman for fonts anymore and these kind of things, and we made it like, ooh, now it's flat design. It's not like the fake drop downs anymore and these kind of things. It's better. This is now an expense system that I have to use. But options are still choices. Aren't choices, but decisions. The more stuff you show me on the page, the more confused I get. What do I want from an expense system? I have an expense. Can I put that in? That's all I want right now. I don't want to see my expenses from the last 50 months. That should be another option somewhere else at the end of the process, not at the beginning of it. It's a non-adaptive UI, so basically on a mobile it wasn't usable either. It's no offline functionality again, and this is for expenses, is pretty cool. I want to take a picture and put it on my expense system. When I go online, it syncs it back to the server and everybody gets money and we're all happy. No access to useful hardware options. I cannot access the camera in that thing. And there's a camera in here where I can just put my expense and take a picture and I'm happy. And I don't have to take it on my phone, put it on Google Drive, find it from Google Drive, convert it into a PNG from a bitmap to a JPEG and upload it on a small connection and hope my money comes back somehow. And security is by jumping through lots of hoops. This thing is only possible on our VPN, which hates hotel wireless, for example. And people always wonder why I don't put my expenses in. I'm like, because you hate me, because you make me use this thing. This is the app for it on Windows 10, which is pretty cool. That's exactly what I want. Here is what went through your credit card, and it tells me what it is, and then I just put my expense in front of it, take the picture, and I'm done. And I can then do a new expense report, or I can actually sort by date and find my other expense reports. It doesn't show me everything at the same time. It shows me one thing well. Show me what I have and where it should go. Allow me to quickly get an overview. Don't expect an interaction model. Don't expect me to use a keyboard and a mouse. I'm using this on a touch screen all the time, which is much more fun. And a lot of touch screens are things nowadays. And allow me to use what my device offers. So this way I can take a picture with the camera that's in my device rather than having to upload it somewhere from OneDrive, Dropbox, or wherever I store my stuff. Now the next step of that were mobile apps. They're good, but they also need love. They actually are dedicated to the operating system and to the device in a lot of times. This is our new travel app that needed an extra virus scanner and an extra thing to download, and then it asked me to set my Android device to allow for installing things that are not on the Android store. So basically, I went through 3 security levels to do a really insecure thing to my phone before I can use it. Not fun either. And there's interesting things. This plus there, I would have expected that actually means I can order a new flight or something like that, but it just means that I can type things into that itinerary, which I don't need anymore because all the data is in there, so I don't know what that plus is. Make the pain of store access and installation worth my while. If I went through all the pains to download your app and install it and give it a pint of blood and my firstborn and my credit card, then it should be an excellent, excellent experience and work magically with everything my phone has to offer. Let me use the device to its abilities. There's a camera in there, there's a geolocation in there, there's all kind of cool, there's a fingerprint in there. Like, on a mobile device, I'm authenticated. The thing knows who I am. Why would I ever need to type in a password and a username again after this? Why does that not go all the way through and say like, well, you installed it, we know who you are, we're not going to give you any other login any longer, we just use that functionality. Because passwords people forget all the time or use the same one everywhere, which is password 123 or something like that. Let me do what I came for. I just want to have my itinerary, I want to book another flight, and so on and so forth. Use notifications that allow me to do things. Don't make me open the app all the time. Just tell me like, by the way, your flight is in 30 minutes. Do you want to check in now? Yes or no? One button check in, not like, okay, you want to check in? Cool. Here's a form. Give me your number for your flight company and your email and so on and so forth. No, one button should do the thing. This is how clever these machines are. And it should work offline, and don't expect massive data downloads on non-Wi-Fi, because that's not fun either. I was in Albania the other day, and you get these scary text messages when you're saying like, you're not in the country where you pay a lot of money for your mobile phone. Let me tell you how much it costs right now. And it was, I think, £12 a megabyte of data, which means the average website, which is 2.2 megabyte big nowadays, would cost me the same as a ticket to see Blade Runner, and I hope it's as good, because if not, I'm going to be pissed, because I'm not going to pay £20 for a website that doesn't do what I'm supposed to do. So if we put these together, we have a different experience. This is an expense app by a company called Vardin. And this now works here on my mobile device. This is what it looks like. It gives me all the things that I had, and it allows me to scroll through it to find more information about it. I can sort by those things. If I added an expense, the thing has been OCR scanned, is in there as an image, and it actually gets the information out of that. If I want to get I get my dates, it got an integration into the keyboard that I was supposed to have. My information has been stored on the device, so there's auto-completion and these kind of things. And I can access the camera to take pictures, and it then gets the information from that picture rather than me having to type it in again. This is what it looks on a mobile device, and this is what the same thing looks on a desktop. It's more or less the same interface, but instead of just showing me the table, which would be this wide on the screen, which is when people do wrong when they go mobile first and then mobile only, it gives me other information next to it. So it gives me a different interface that is again catered to this kind of interaction now that I'm on a desktop machine. And the best thing about that expense manager is not only that it's open source and on GitHub, but it's in the browser. This is a URL. As it is a PWA, once I went through that on my Android device, it became an application. It had an icon on the desktop. I can click it and open it full screen without any of the URL bar and all that shit about it. But I can use it on a desktop, I can use it on my mobile, I can use it on my tablet. It's the same thing. And it works offline where it can. And it works nice in all the form factors that you think about. So rather than jumping from one screen to another on a desktop when I have enough space, I don't need to do that. On a mobile device, I only get what I need at that time and not the whole overload of not knowing what I'm doing. So what are the positives of the web? The link is a simple distribution model, the simplest we have. That's the success of the web. As soon as you put something online, somebody will be able to see it. And you will not be able to remove it as well anymore, so that's another thing. But it's a very, very amazing thing to do. If I send you a link and say, like in a messenger, try this app out, cool. If I ask you, can you go to the Windows Store and type that in and make sure you don't do any typo, because a lot of malware is just typos of known applications as well in these stores, that's a different way of actually distributing it. We have simple atomic updates. If I want to change the logo of my PWA app on a website, I change that image. If I want to change the logo in my Android app, I rebuild the app, I resubmit it, I ask the user to download 50 megs to have a new background image. That's not a good experience because it was my problem that my logo was not good. Flexible layout options. We have grids, we've got Flagbox, media queries, VW and VH. If you don't know these CSS things yet, look at them. They're friggin' amazing. And we have a small data footprint. The loading on demand and environment. On my mobile phone, this app is much, much smaller than on my desktop because I don't need all that content all the time. I need just what I want to have to get the first interaction in there and then load more things afterwards. Don't load them all up front. There's a reusability of code. The conversion to other form factors is easy. I can turn an HTML, CSS, and JavaScript into an iOS app, into an Android app, into a Windows binary, but I can't do it the other way around because it's not an open format that allows me simple conversion. The negative, of course, is it's patchy access to hardware. Not all mobile devices allow me to access the camera. I cannot access a USB port in a standardized way yet. I cannot do a reading from a card that needs to be validated. These kind of things are only possible outside the web right now. The verification and authentication can be hard. On a mobile device, as I said, I'm already authenticated and the app knows it can tie into the operating system for doing that. Most web technology cannot do that right now. Windows Hello is an exception. I can actually get the verification from the operating system as a JavaScript API now as well. There's a huge fragmentation of devices and displays. You basically do not know what people use on the web and don't make any assumptions that they do. It's just not safe, especially in a world where every screen could be any size right now, and resolution and color depth and so on and so forth. And it's patchy trust in capabilities because we messed up the web so many times and it's so easy to have a data leak on the web. Users are not that quite trusting it. They're totally happy to have an app that they don't know what's in there, to install that and trust it. But on the web, we always feel like a bit, that's the malware and all kind of stuff going on. And payments are not easy or expected. The expected thing is something we really need to fix on a human level. We trained people for a whole generation that everything on the web is free. Or you can use an ad blocker and make it free. This is not healthy. This makes no sense. Somehow, somewhere needs to be paid. And I'd rather pay for applications than have ads spy on me and actually make money that way. The positives of native are offline capabilities by design, full access to hardware, you're authenticated on a verified device, you have a high trust distribution model, people trust things in stores more than they do on the web, and it's easy to pay things. At least in iOS it's easy, and Android it gets better as well, unless you're like me and you have an English credit card and you live in Germany and the German travel systems hate you. Bleeding edge technology normally comes out of native as well because you have a competitive advantage. Once Apple said we now have facial recognition, everybody's like, oh my God, that's amazing. Samsung had it 4 years ago, different story. But the bleeding edge stuff comes in native and then bleeds into a standardized web sooner or later, but it's not that fast. The negatives of native, huge data footprint with non-atomic updates. You always have to update all the time. Like when I get to a new wireless, it says like 60 apps on your phone want to update. I haven't used any of them in months. Why do they update? Why do they even need updates if I haven't even used them? I think icons should start to rust and fall apart the more you don't use them and then vanish over time. That would be amazing. Slow update cycles because of negotiation overhead. So it's fine that I can update my app and send it to the store, but sometimes it takes days for them to come back to me and say like, okay, your app is updated now. And that's really, really dangerous when it comes to security things. High expectations and breakneck competition. Like the competition in the market in stores is huge, especially when it comes to money. The price race to the bottom. On Android, you cannot sell anything more than 99 cents because people are just used to 99 cents. You can then charge them whatever for updates inside your application, but upfront asking for money is seen as something dirty. There's bespoke development for each platform with only minor reuse. Of course, you got things like React Native and these kind of abstractions, but if you really want to go iOS, you probably go iOS, and then you go Android, and you have two different development teams that don't talk to each other and actually hate each other. So how do PWAs bridge these differences? What's the difference? What's new now? What have we done better this time? Well, the first thing, a PWA needs to be served from a secure origin. So it needs to be HTTPS or even better HTTP2. Once we have that, we can give you a more access to the device. We can allow you to store more things on the device. A plain HTTP website nowadays is basically an it's basically a disservice to your end users. With an HTTP blah 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 example.com, I never know if it's really that. Man-in-the-middle attacks are really easy on that. Make sure you encrypt your content because your end users trust you with their data. Once we have that, we have a chance to actually get you a better functionality, get you access to more on the device. With HTTP, we just could not do that without losing lots of information. It's quite sad how many of the things in HTML5 we invented. I worked on Firefox OS for Mozilla, and we had all these cool things. We had like a battery API, and then all of a sudden we realized the battery API can be used to fingerprint people if it's over HTTP, so we had to make it HTTPS as well. So half the things that we put in there in 2005, 2006, had to 2015, 2016, have to be taken out right now again, or made more secure, or put behind a flag, because we find that the evil people of the web are actually much faster in embracing new technology than the people who deliver things to end users. It's kind of odd and kind of depressing. A PWA needs to have an app manifest, so user agents know about its requirements and give access to the needed features. And this is for the first time we have a standardized manifest. This is not make a WebOS manifest, an Apple manifest, a Firefox OS app manifest, a Windows mobile manifest. It's a standardized way of telling it. It's a JSON object that you link from your index HTML, and this is a very simple way of looking at it. It's name, short name, it got the icons, it's got a start URL. This has to be a one canonical URL where your app is running from. And it's display standalone. This means you don't get any URLs anymore. Orientation, background color, theme color, and then you can add all the features in there that you need to have. Needs access to the payment API, needs access to these and these and these and these. That allows us to have a better way for end users to get notified to give the app access to certain things when they need it, not upfront. That was always the big thing in Android as well to me, in older Androids. I don't know what's now, when like every app asked for access to everything. Like, hey, here's a puzzle game with like fluffy animals. Can I get access to your address bar? No. Okay, then you can't play the fluffy animal game because we obviously need that access. What for? We don't explain that to you. You want to play fluffy animals? Okay, I give access to it. Nobody reads these things like terms and conditions. Nobody reads them either. There's a startup in London that I know that had me in stitches. They had in the middle of the terms and conditions, they had a sentence saying like, if you find this and read this, call this telephone number, we give you £500. It took them 2 years for the first person to find that thing. Nobody reads terms and conditions. So yeah, it's not fun. So app manifests, the cool thing is that they're just another resource on the web. They're a JSON file connected to a domain and connected to an app. So what does that mean? That means for people who go to app stores to find things, they don't even need to find an extra way. You don't even need to find an extra way to submit them, because search engines can index stuff on the web. You know, Google, there's also Bing, there's another search, and you can Google for that if you don't know it yet. They can index and ingest them, and this is what Bing is already doing. So if you, we had our crawlers out for a year now. So if you have an app manifest on your app, on your PWA, it's not many. Let's put it like this. This is what it looks like. So in the store, in the Windows store, there's an application called Channel 9, which is our video platform. If you do a search for Channel 9 Microsoft, probably because Channel 9 had another result, their search result in Bing looks like this. So you have the app, you have the URL, you have the reviews of the app, and you actually have an install button. Just by using a manifest. You don't need to do anything extra for that to get that extra display functionality. In the store itself, it gets all the data from the manifest as well. So you get the name, you get the description, you get the icons, you get the screenshots, and you have it listed in the store. So you don't have the problem that your name listings in the store differ amazingly from your application, because once you change something of that, it gets re-indexed and it gets shown in the store again. The other big part of the PWA stack, next to the manifest, is a service worker. Service worker is a JavaScript API, only available over HTTPS, of course. And if you want to really, really quickly describe it, it's like a proxy server that sits in between the web apps, the browser, and the network. So it's in JavaScript, scriptable way to deal with any of the requests that go from your app to the server and from the server to your app, which is amazing, because in the past we basically hoped that browsers cached things. We hoped that something worked. Now we have full control over what to store where and what to do with it. So you can use a service worker to define what should be loaded and cached from where. So instead of having images that you don't want to reload all the time, you just create a cache called images and put your images in there. And you know next time that user comes to your website, it comes from their device and they don't have to download those images again, and they don't cause traffic on your server and cause delays because of the latency of the network. You can intercept network requests and define what happens. You can serve from cache. You can refresh your application in the background. You can convert before display. So if the end user's device is capable of WebP, but all your images in JPEG, you can convert them on the fly and then store them on their device. And that way you save a lot of traffic for both of you again as well. You can refresh your app in the background, you can pull new content and notify the user with push notifications that something new is available. I love that every time when Twitter does something new and people get like, oh my God, there's something new. I don't even realize it because I'm using the Twitter PWA. All of a sudden my interface changed and I'm like, cool, so that's a new feature, fine. And other people, oh, I re-downloaded it. This was so annoying to download and now I'm part of this. They have this new thing with 280 characters. I don't know if you've seen it yet. There's like this little ring. Instead of saying how many characters you got left, I got stuck for half an hour yesterday because I thought it never finished loading because it looks like a loading thing indicator and isn't one. Super annoying, but fair enough. So if you want to know more about PWA and how to use these systems and how to learn from them, there's lots of resources on the web that you can use. The first one is the Service Worker Cookbook by Mozilla. That one is a list of different service workers and what they do by recipe. So say like, hey, I want to store my images offline. Here's a recipe how to do that. I want to have a lot of static content and a few dynamic things. Here's a service worker that deals with that, and so on and so forth. This is on GitHub. It's open source. If you wanna commit to it, I'm taking over some of the maintenance of it right now. So there's a lot of good stuff in there. Google has an API called Workbox, which is a JavaScript library that is on top of Service Worker. It makes it a bit easier to use Service Worker rather than understanding the API itself and reading through W3C documentation. You can just use Workbox and say like, cache network first, these 15 images, and so on and so forth. That's been used by a lot of companies out there. When we did our research and we looked at service workers in the wild, a lot of people are using Workbox because it's well maintained and it's a simpler way to use the API. But if you really want to know about service worker, reading the spec is probably a good idea as well. I'm working on PWA Builder. This one is a website where you can go and you give it the URL of your app. And then it creates the web manifest automatically for you by going through the information in your HTML already, and then you can edit it and save it. We also pull your fav icon and generate lots of icons in different sizes and formats for your application that you can download as a zip file then. It creates the service worker for offline functionality and push notifications. So we have a few recipes in there. You say like, I want this, I want this, I want this. And then it creates the service worker file. Then you upload the service worker file and the app manifest file to your application server. And then you can create binary apps for older Android, iOS, and Windows Store applications that way. So you don't need to actually build those. You probably, I don't know, if you really want to get iOS to the nth degree, you will write something. But this is a really good way to keep your things in check, maintain it in one space, and start building things with it. It also has a lot of documentation on it, an in-depth explanation what the validator and generator for the web manifest and service workers are. So you can upload your service workers there as well and your manifests, and we tell you when there's problems in there, when there's accessibility issues with your colors, when there's like naming issues with your names, and so on and so forth. Google has a tool called Lighthouse, which is an extension to the Google developer tools. So in those developer tools, you can it's an add-on to it, and you can look at your application inside Chrome, and then it gives you audits for it. It says like it's 100 progressive web app, 88 performance, 100 accessibility, 85 best practices, and explains all the things that were audited, how they passed, and what things you can do better. I love this, but I find it also dangerous because people start playing to those numbers rather than seeing if the functionality really made sense for their end users. So not everything needs a notification, but people put a notification in now because otherwise they don't get 100%. So be sure to not chase those numbers, but actually make sure what makes sense to your end users. And if you use notifications, please, please, please use them responsibly. We don't want notifications to be the next pop-ups. We don't want those things that just annoy the end user. They should give the end user a value and something useful to do. If a notification doesn't have a button that needs to trigger something, it's probably not a necessary notification. Telling the end user something changed in the app, why don't you come back, is just depressing and it's just desperate. And many websites do that right now. You go to the website and the first thing is like, do you want to subscribe to notifications for this website? I'm like, buy me dinner first. I don't even know who you are. This is just pushy. Push notifications. Oh, that's where they're from. What the web can do today is a great resource that shows you all the different APIs that are basically SW3C standards right now. You got like Bluetooth, NFC, and so on and so forth. Ambient light sensor, that's been around for ages. It's pretty cool, actually. And it actually does a check on the browser that you're currently using and gives you the checkbox to say like, hey, that browser already does that, and this browser you're currently using, don't do it. And it clicks through the standards to actually read up what they are about and what you could use them for. There's a PWA directory, which is not that maintained because there's a lot of copy things in there, but it's fun to look at other people doing this stuff. And as it's the web, you can look at the source code of these things and understand how they've done it. There's PWA stats by Cloud4 that shows you success stories of PWAs, what people have done, like Flipkart and Forbes and another time Forbes, okay, settled, raffles, hotels, and so on and so forth. So these are all like, if you need to convince your business people, there are great stories there. Sometimes depressing when you look at them as well. I remember there was a case a year ago where they said like, there's a sales company in Africa. It's like Africa's Amazon, whatever that means. And they're like, yeah, and they use the PWA and they got like 700% more retention and like 50 times more users. And even on iOS, because iOS not support Service Worker yet, they had like an increase of 72%. And I'm like, that's a really strange number. What's going on there? And then I talked to the product manager of that one, and it was not the full app that became a PWA, but only one that they sent out to 50 users. And one of them was an American tourist in Africa that had an iPhone with him, so that was the iPhone usage there. So never trust percentages, not a good idea. PWAs are a great opportunity to clean up our app act, to make our apps better for our end user and to not give them the old apps, not give them the mobile apps, not lock them into one device, but give them the functionality of apps without forcing them to change their environment. The link is the distribution model, and this is the coolest thing about it because that works everywhere. You can find a news item with a link in it, an article, a blog post, a bot, an email, a message, a poster, an NFC beacon, a movie product placement, or a dog color. All of these things can have links in them. And once you have it, you just click on the link, you follow it, the HTML loads, the JavaScript executes, the service worker starts running, and the magic happens, and it becomes an application just by using it. And that way, subsequent loads offer more offline functionality, and you can ask for more permissions instead of asking people for every permission before they even know who you are. So PWA to me is a try before you buy. You install the app by visiting it and granting more permissions with more visits. And if you don't like it, you close it and it's gone. And you don't have to go through the uninstall process of your mobile phone. You don't have to clean up your devices. It's just there or not there, depending if you want to use it or not use it. You can allow users to do what they came for and reach what they want to reach. Don't demand them to change their device or go to a store or do something else. People already made a decision to follow a link and trust you to get something good. So that way you can reach people where they are and you don't ask them to cater to you because you're not that important. I'm not that important. Nobody is. So let's simplify our products, slim down what we do, the worst problems that we have, and rethink the approach, and you will reach new users that way. Google's story about PWAs is all about like Africa, India, Bangladesh, all these places that have a positive GDP, that actually have money, that have growth, but have really shitty phones and really bad connectivity. So sending them a 50 meg app is not going to happen, but sending them a URL where they can actually load something, use something, and store something, different story altogether. The PWA approach fixes the worst problems of native apps and brings the best of the web to the app space. And this is basically why I'm so excited about it, because I'm a web guy. I love web. I don't like apps too much. But I think the technology has moved on, but we haven't merged those two together. We still think these are two different spaces, and they're not. Why should I go through a marketplace when I can have a link? So the whole PWA is all these things there is a nice thing to consider, is still a great idea. But when it comes to messaging inside Google, Mozilla, Safari, Samsung, and all the others, there's always this thing of FIRE. I hate acronyms. I work for Microsoft. We have enough acronyms to rest my life. But what FIRE means is the first thing, think fast. Render what is needed as fast as possible. If your app takes 3 seconds to load, you lost 70% of your users. Because we're not on a mobile, we're not happy if something takes time. On a desktop, we give it more time. Integrated. Apps show up where they're supposed to show up. I don't need to want to go back to the browser to use your application. Once the application, the service worker, and the manifest has worked, I have an icon on my machine. I click on the icon, and when I go through the Alt tab, I find your app in there. When I do the search on the device, I find your app in the app folder and not somewhere random. They're just integrated with where you're supposed to find applications. They need to be responsive. So don't give the same interface on mobile and on desktop. It's very simple nowadays to do different interfaces that adapt to the availability. And they need to be engaging. So use notifications and background updates instead of just asking people to update the thing all the time themselves. Make them aware that the app is working for them in the background all the time and does something useful. And don't tell them like, oh, next time, oh, you just loaded it, you have to reload it again. Remember, Windows updates, not fun. So this is, for example, Twitter. This is the native app on Twitter. This is Twitter Lite, which is the PWA. You see the PWA loaded much faster already. It needs about 1/10 of the data that the full app does, but it does all the functionality like it's supposed to do. It has the integration with the camera. It allows you to set and retweet and all the things. You can quote them. You can upload your images. I use the Twitter Lite for half a year now. And I don't miss anything. And if the experience is not the same, so fucking what? Nobody compares them next to each other. Only developers do that. The amount of times we have 12 browsers open and we say like, there's a difference between the two windows. Nobody cares. Only we care, or the people who don't understand the web care. End users are just happy if the thing is not broken on their device in their environment. If it looks different on the desktop to a mobile, thank you. You built something for the web. You didn't put a JPEG on the web and hope that people like it. That's all I had. So thanks very much.